All right, welcome into another episode of Woodward Tigers here at woodwardsports.com. Alongside me is Chris Brown, John, and Uper. You find us on Apple Podcast, iTunes, that's the same thing, Apple Podcast, Spotify, wherever you listen to podcasts, and over at woodwardsports.com. It's me.
What?
I'm hearing background noise.
Echo?
I realized that was the audio. I'm playing the SeaWolves audio behind me. Right now, the SeaWolves at the top of the 7-5-2. As if they win tonight, they advance to the championship of the Eastern League, and they get the winner of Somerset and Portland, which I think Somerset's up in that series, correct?
They won the first game, yeah, and it looks like it's tied in the 7th right now, 3-3.
So plenty to get to tonight. We're going to talk about the Scott Harris press conference, some takeaways from that, and one of the questions we're going to ask the audience and ourselves is, what will be the first move that Scott Harris would do, and we'll talk about that. The Tigers in Baltimore, some Joey Wentz, another strong start. So it looks like he's developing some consistency. Kerry Carpenter with his 6th home run. I want to talk about that a little bit because the piece he was on would have been a good one. He would have hit 3 home runs. There was a good article today that was posted in Sports Illustrated about the minor leaguers who helped get the union going, which is a big deal to be part of the union. And the other news we're going to hit, and this is going to be called the opener. So we're going to hit 3 or 4 topics and go through them rapid fire style so we can stay on pace. And the goal is a good, clean, crisp hour of entertaining baseball talk. So without further, I love saying the word crisp. If I could say the word crisp to describe things, Jeremy on our YouTube channel, by the way, shout out to Jeremy for every time I'm on Woodward. He always gives me a shout out. So much appreciated. And thank you, Jeremy. All right. So I'm congested. So I'm going to be a lot of times when I'm going to be doing this, I'm going to mic my mic because I don't want to on the mic. So, but let's talk about Scott Harris. I was at the press conference, and that was, again, we had a quick emergency pod. We hit some of the quick things pretty quick. We hit a lot of things pretty quickly, but absorbing it, kind of sitting back and marinating on of course, the general manager speak and that kind of stuff. In terms of kind of takeaways, what I thought we talked about our takeaways, obviously, but the more we marinate on it a little bit, not like NyQuil on chicken, which is a TikTok trend that I'm sorry on that. Anyways, I just wanted to know what you guys, after marinating on it for a little bit, do you have any further thoughts? John, I didn't get your thoughts about Scott Harris, but what was your initial impression?
Oh, I think everyone is in like the same boat. I really haven't heard any bad stuff about him yet. I'm just really excited. I'm glad we have a young GM. I'm glad we don't have an old man as a GM anymore. I think that's important. But I don't know. He's 3 years younger than Miggy, I saw, but yeah, I'm excited. I feel like everyone's excited, honestly. Like, I haven't heard any bad things really at all so far.
What about you, Uper? I mean, I know you're a man that I like to think you're the philosopher of our podcast.
I love it. Well, I think the thing is, the thing that jumped out at me is he had a lot of things to say that sounded very good. But let's face it, typically when your predecessor has been unpopular and they've been run out of their job, it's pretty easy to win the press conference for the new guy. You don't have to say too many things that sound pretty good to win the press conference. And I think he won the press conference, so that's a good step. That should have been a gimme, and it was. And he sounded very impressive. You can tell just listening to him the education level that he has. I think he sounded pretty confident. But the proof's going to be in the pudding. If you put just use a round number, if it's going to be 1,000 steps to win a World Series title, he just took number 1. Okay, so there's going to be a lot of steps coming up this winter. But I like the idea. When he philosophized a bit about the strike zone and controlling the strike zone from both sides, made a lot of sense. Now can they put it into practice? It will be very fun to watch. So I think he's off to a good start.
Well said.
How about you, Chris?
Yeah, actually, one of the questions we got was from Zach, Montana bad boy, and he just wanted to know our thoughts on Scott Harris. So this will be essentially hitting that right away. But yeah, I mean, I echo what the guy said. I think he was very impressive. I think I mentioned before. I don't know if I mentioned it on our last show, but I had actually listened to him on a podcast before and was annoyed by how impressive he was then, before he was with the Tigers. Just in like in a good way, like had an opportunity because he was the son of two doctors. He could go and be an unpaid intern, but after that, it was all him. Really, I mean, he worked his ass off. Like the stories of him going to business school while working full time with the Cubs, just in case baseball didn't work out. So he's got the work ethic, and the thing I love about him is that he is kind of from a varied tree, if you will. Like one of the things we see a lot in sports, and this is, it's in every sport. Somebody wins that is good, so they get pulled. You start taking the underlings. We saw it in football all the time. Like every year, it's a new member of the New England Patriots who gets poached, and it never works out. But with Scott Harris, he started off as an intern. He wouldn't work for MLB for a couple of years, which people say is a great thing to do, just to get a feel for the ins and outs of how everything works. Then he's in Chicago under Theo Epstein and Jed Hoyer. That's a pretty highly regarded brain trust there. And then he leaves there and goes to San Francisco under Farhan Zaidi, who came up through the A's with Billy Beane, and then briefly with the Dodgers and Andrew Friedman. Like that's three different, really well-respected kind of, GM trees. So this isn't a case where he's just, just the youngest guy in one group that's good. He's viewed as good by, all across baseball. And I think that's a great sign for the Tigers.
Yeah, it's almost like the equivalency you're talking about for football. It's like he went through the Bill Parcells tree. He went through the Bill Walsh tree. And I'm trying to think of another one that's a pretty impressive tree.
In college, you got the Saban tree.
Yeah. Okay. There we go.
I mean, Saban is under Belichick, is under Parcells, I think. Really,
yeah, that's true. That's one hell of a tree. So, but I'm trying to think of another older tree. I'm thinking of I was thinking of the
Steve the Bill Walsh.
No, I mentioned Bill Walsh.
Oh, yeah. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So I was trying to think of somebody else. But
that's exactly it. That's the exact same idea. Is like he wasn't just the next guy in line from where you don't really know if he's any good at all, and it's just he was available. This is a guy who's been at multiple places with multiple styles of leadership and seems to have a good way to synthesize it all and make it work. So yeah, I mean, I think it's about as well as the Tigers could have done. And again, I apologized last time. I don't know if I apologized, but I said I just admitted I was wrong. I didn't think the Tigers were going to do anything like this, and I was impressed that they did.
Yeah, and again, it's one of those things where I think one of the biggest takeaways I took from the press conference too is the fact that here he was. You could tell that he's had a long last couple of days, and then he just was able to, because based off his schedule. He mentioned the Richmond and Erie game on Sunday because he was torn what teams to root for and everything. And the fact that I like the fact that him and Hinch and they're all on the same game plan, and some of the things that. One of the things that I mentioned, or one of the things that I read about that I thought Jason Beck did a good job on, was in terms of his pitching. A lot of the 1-year deal, 2-year deals, the Giants have built the rotation based off kind of quick building, if you will. The Tigers are completely different because they have a lot more organic arms. So I'm interested. That to me is the most interesting thing I'm looking forward to Scott Harris to see. If he's going to work with Gabe Rivas and Fetter and just trust the system, or he's going to take some 1-year arms, and hopefully the curse of free agency that the Tigers have witnessed, aka Mike Peltry, aka Mark Lowe. I can go on and on and on.
Jordan Zimmerman. Yeah.
Well, no, I don't look. I'm not gonna. Again, that to me is Jordan Zimmerman. No one expected that. No one expected the wheels to fall off that quickly. He was the second best arm on the market then, and I sometimes think Avila gets really. Was it a lot of money? Sure. But that's what they wanted to do then. And it was the second best arm, period. So, anyway. All right, moving on. The other thing I wanted to get to was the Baltimore and Tigers series, because the Tigers took 2 out of 3. They won the series. against a team that was contending the playoffs. And a couple of takeaways I wanted to talk about was Joey Wentz. And Wentz just came off the IL. Chris, I know that we talked about in the beginning of the year, his fastball, his command in spring training looked really good, and then just kind of dropped off. I feel now Wentz is getting a little more comfortable with his off-speed offerings so far. I'm you two. I'm interested to see what you guys think about Wentz's start.
Yeah, I mean, we saw him out in Lansing. We saw him in Toledo this year. We saw him early in the year where he was spraying the ball everywhere, and he really seems to have, dialed in his fastball command. He still will lose it for like a batter or two. You'll see him just randomly start throwing balls, but he seems to be able to pull back in. I think the big thing for his development this year was the cutter. He's always he was known for his changeup, and his fastball has some really nice characteristics, but his curveball was always it's kind of slow and not necessarily a great pitch. But he's developed this cutter, this little harder, late horizontal movement, and that's really helped him, keep hitters off balance. And yeah, I mean, you have to look at him now as a guy who's got a chance to win a spot in the rotation starting next year, which is it was something that I kind of maintained like a year and a half ago. And like, I think that Wentz has a lower ceiling than Skubal, Mize, Manning, but I always felt like he had just as good a chance to get back into the rotation starter. And that's what it looks like now. So yeah, I mean, it's been another positive development from the depths of the pitching this year.
I've liked what I've seen in terms of I've been trying to watch the pace that he works at in terms of how fast his delivery is. He doesn't seem to vary. He seems like he's very consistent right now. Maybe that's leading to some of the strike throwing. He seems like and again, I'm not a pitching coach, but I try to watch, how they land and are they on balance? And it seems like he is. So I mean, that's off to a good start. He's kind of where Faedo was earlier this summer. After a few starts, Faedo looked good, and we were hoping that would continue on. He ran into the hip injury, but now Wentz is kind of taking that mantle. He's the guy who's had a few good starts. Hopefully he gets one or two more here before they're done, and we get a better look. And yeah, I don't see any reason why he's not taking the ball every fifth day next spring if he continues on this path.
Yeah, so this was actually my inside the number. So, I mean, I can just get to it now. But so Joey Wentz in his last 4 starts has given up a combined 2 runs in 20 and a third innings pitched. I know it's just 4 starts, but I mean, 2 runs in 20 innings pitched. I mean, he's got a FIP of 2.72, 18 strikeouts to 4 walks, and ERA is under 1 right now. Again, it's a short sample size, but I mean, yeah, I think he's definitely positioned himself as a starter next year. So yeah, you guys, that was my inside the number was Joey Wentz.
Yeah, that's we also had a request for Danny Soretti impressions on the podcast, and we'll be glad to do that a little later. Soretti, yes.
By the way, actual thoughts, not just impressions. Okay.
Yeah, the impressions. One last thing I wanted to get to before in part of the opener segment is I know we've talked about division rivals. We talked about the Twins and all that, and I think we're gonna skirt that we laugh at the Twins later. I mean, that's something we'll do later.
Absolutely.
Too easy. But what I do want to talk about with the minor leagues is they are now part of the MLB union. That's a big deal because these players have been not represented and they needed some representation. So there was a great article posted by Emma Baccarelli in Sports Illustrated, and I thought it was a really good job of pointing who was getting this responsible. One of the players was Joe Hudson, who was a catcher who's just an org catcher, 31 years old in the Rays system. And we'll post a link for everybody here on our YouTube channel if everybody wants to check it out. It's a really good read. It's not behind a paywall. Detroit News player development roster. So it was crazy. My cold acted there. Please. Speaking of the player development roster, before I forget, Chris, are we going to post it on the website or are we going to post it on Twitter?
The roster for the instruct.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I don't know. I didn't know. I guess we should probably put it on the site. I guess. Show meeting after the
show
show.
Meeting. Sorry. All right. Show meeting over. So go back into it. So this is a great story about how they got unionized. It took it took taken 17 days, and it was the whole mix of people involved in it. One of the things that I really have to admire about this is that some of these guys know their role and kind of, even like, for example, the story of Trevor Hillenberger, you got signing bonus of $1,000, and take some money out for taxes too, which I mentioned in the story. I mean, what people don't realize is that again, I hate when people say, "Oh, they're playing a kids game," and there's a lot to go with it. And I understand our audience is pretty smart and hip to that stuff, but every time I see somebody ragging on a minor leaguer or something to that effect, it's like, first of all, get a life, and secondly, they're giving. I mean, what they have to do in terms of per diem for food. I mean, they're looking at sandwiches that you get, those that deli ham. You know how you go get
Fire festival sandwiches.
Yeah, you know,
Yes.
that meat that's like it's a pound of ham. It's $1.49. It's like, is it really ham though?
It's like
Sodium
school.
intake is like 90 or 100 grams of sodium per one slice of ham and all that. And their treat is spending $10 at McDonald's, because now McDonald's, the average cost of McDonald's right now is ridiculous. Anyway, I don't want to get too sidetracked, but get a chance to read the article. But I wanted to get your opinions real quick before we get to our inside the numbers this evening. But this is a great story, and I hope that this, again, I think the major leagues will find a way to go, well, guess what? We'll take away a couple minor league teams. They'll find a way to distribute it in their own way. But just want to get your thoughts on it.
I'm happy it's happened. I think that, there's no reason to have athletes on that level living hand to mouth, barely scraping by, having 6 guys living in an apartment. If you're good enough to be on that level, and they think that you're someone who can help them on a major league level at some point, they should be investing in those guys and to get them to that point. So there's no reason why they're making them live in conditions that just aren't conducive to improvement. So hopefully the union can do something for them and get them to the level I think that most of us would be more comfortable hearing about.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I want more eyes on the minor league baseball, more eyes on the product. I think something we would like to see in the future.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's basic human worker rights is always good to see. We do come at it from like a slightly different area though, because we know that, like you said, Raj, that ultimately, if it's better for the players, owners aren't going to just eat that cost. They're going to find another way to make that up. And if that's transferring more of the burden to minor league teams, which might hurt them more, that's what's going to happen. So it's seldom in life is anything 100% perfect, but I've wanted minor leaguers to have a better working conditions for years now, and so it's hopefully this will get them that. And I think it's a good thing overall. It's just there's going to be some unintended consequences, unfortunately.
So, by the way, breaking news: John Rosdoff with a offensive field single, his second hit of the night, tries in Danny Soretti, and I'm pulling up. I got Chris. I've got the clip.
Oh, you got it. Okay.
Yeah.
Dave Alvarez with the magic touch today sits Josh Crouch, who's been struggling in Double-A, and brings in John Rosdoff, the Army grad, who hasn't played in like 2 weeks, and good for Rosdoff.
So that drives in the run, and it gives the SeaWolves a nice little cushion there. So it's now 6-2 in the 8th inning.
Nice.
Continue on. So John, go ahead. What were you going to say about the minor leagues?
No, I mean, I pretty much said what I said. I was just reading the article. It said that one of the players was making like $200 every 2 weeks or something. That's just crazy. But yeah, I mean, obviously we would like the MLB to put more, effort and get more eyes onto that product. I think you guys do a great job of doing that. So yeah, I mean, I think they could do a lot better job, and hopefully they will.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I just muted.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I think ultimately Major League Baseball might one day. I mean, we may. They're under team development contracts for another 10 years, so things are going to stay the same, I think, for at least a decade. But it wouldn't shock me if down the road, baseball tries to get fewer teams, even, maybe 2 levels or 3, to where the point where it's almost like all prospects playing against each other at all times, where, you don't have these sort of, the guys that are paid to play catch with your prospects, as it were. And
yeah, what about the like the G League in the NBA? You think it's something like that?
It's something. I think that's what baseball would like to have, like a dedicated developmental league that, maybe nobody cares about the game or the game, like the outcomes. It's just all about, get these players better, give them a chance to make it. Now that's one of the issues with that, though, is that it may be better for the major league product now, but it's terrible for baseball writ large, where you're not growing the game in these smaller cities anymore. People in, Des Moines, as it were, they don't really have a connection to baseball anymore because there's no team there. It's if that were to happen. So
right.
Yeah, it's a tough way to go. Like we talked about it when the original expansion was. Like, if you were to start baseball right now, you would not build it the way it is structured right now. But the way it's structured right now came about organically through 150 years of teams springing up all over the country, and eventually the biggest ones making their way to the biggest cities. So I don't know. I'm stuck between wanting things to be the way they've always been, because I feel like it produces good things, but you have to acknowledge that things change eventually.
Yeah, because I think that in some cases, if they were to do it the way they wanted to, I think it would look like something like you'd see in English Premier League, where you see these academies, or even Cuba. I mean, there is in Cuba, it's common that they identify the athletes pretty quickly, and they do sports all day. That's all they do. And I remember my dad telling me some stories about, in terms of identifying boxers and baseball players, and how different they were treated from the rest of the public. And in some ways, it kind of parallels that now. For example, we were talking to somebody at Woodward yesterday, Chris. Remember that gentleman we were talking to, and how much they had to spend on gear, and it's getting, and people are playing fall ball. We've talked about this numerous times recently. And so I think it's going to get to that point where, 100 years ago, there was a minor league team there was a team for your factory team. That there was, I'm not kidding, folks. I was doing a deep dive on a Detroit Star player who was Cuban and played, one of the first ones that played in Detroit. And I was astonished to find out that these teams, like the Ford had 3 teams. They had a Rouge team. The Wyandotte had a team, like all these semi-pro teams. At one point, the Detroit News was following them around, and they had the Detroit Yacht Club had a baseball team. It was really ingrained. Baseball is part of everything. Of course, there's no NBA around. There's no television around. There's really nothing to do. But
you play baseball, you sit around and get tuberculosis.
I think there are stories where
Chesterfields. There
were guys who played for some of those factory teams who turned down the major leagues because they were doing better.
Yeah,
they're getting paid by the rich owners of those companies to represent them.
I mean, there's the Page Fence Giants, a story that Mitch, a member here from the Southern chapter of the Sabre chapter here. I thought Mitch did a really good job of talking about that, and how that was a team that had the company behind them, and they were able to afford these things, but few and far between. But now it's a completely different thing, and it's not what I think you're onto something about that, Chris. I think that the structure itself is outdated, and I think baseball is trying to catch up with it, but they're going to take some time before they kind of go, and pop somebody in the head or something to that effect. So, all right, folks, it's now time for Inside the Numbers. So that, what that means, time for that annoying sounder. All right. So I know John gave his inside number. Chris, what was your inside number this week?
So mine is 23. And it's a bit of a stretch, but it's fun. So 23 difference in weighted runs created plus as a team for the San Francisco Giants in the 3 years before Scott Harris was there, and in the 3-ish seasons with Scott Harris. So from 2017 to 2019, the Giants as a team posted an 82 rated runs created plus. So 18% below league average as a team for hitters. And we remember, of course, that they were last place along with the Tigers in 2017. For comparison, at the same time, from 2017 to 2019, the Tigers were 86 WRC plus. So they were better than the Giants offensively. Now, since 2020, the Giants have had a 105 WRC plus. So as soon as Harris got there, they jumped up 23 points, as it were, to now being 5% over average. And the same time, the Tigers have compiled at 88. So the Tigers got Tigers got 2 better, and the Giants got 23 better, 23% better. Now, obviously, we can't give all that credit to Scott Harris, but let's do it anyway.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right, Uper, what is your inside the number this week?
Okay, my numbers are 31 and 300 million. Aaron Judge, owner of 60 home runs this year, currently carrying an OPS plus of 211 and been above 140, I think, for 6 straight years in OPS plus. Obviously, what he does in the postseason will be a lot of fun this year. Is he going to break the record here in the next couple of weeks for the American League home run title? A lot of good stuff. He's had a wonderful season, playing well in the outfield. Next year, he's going to be a free agent. He's going to be 31 years old. And he turned down the $213 million offer and bet on himself, as has been chronicled everywhere. And a lot of the speculation is, is he going to be well over $300 million on this next deal? So my question is, after living through the Miguel Cabrera extension at a similar age, are you giving $300 million to a 31-year-old Aaron Judge? I don't know. My inclination is, because of his athleticism, someone will. Probably the Yankees, but who knows? It could be another team. But I just, Miguel Cabrera, we don't always have to use Miguel, but we know it was a massive contract and it kind of petered out pretty quick. Judge is a bit more athletic in terms of, if he's not carrying the extra weight, does that mean he'll age better through his 30s? But he's so big, that worries me, the size. I don't know. It's going to be a very interesting winter to see if he gets a $300 million contract at his age.
Yeah.
I don't
see it. Yeah, I don't see, like, what other team than the Yankees has that kind of money to offer. I really
Most
don't.
of them.
Name one team that you could see giving him a $300 million contract.
Dodgers, Cubs,
Boston,
Rangers,
Boston,
Mets,
come on, nowhere, yeah.
Boston,
Yeah.
Washington,
Seattle.
Yeah.
Seattle.
Well, just because I play devil's advocate, and Seattle always seems like to be the name and mixed in there. What were we gonna say, Chris?
So they're probably 20.
Were you memorized by who just liked your tweet?
No, somebody liked my tweet.
No, the one I posted, John Ronsoff, a former Tiger GM, liked their tweet.
Oh, nice. No, I think there are probably 20 teams who could pay Aaron Judge, but there are probably 5 teams who would, and they are the teams that can live with a $300 million contract that goes sour, and that's the Yankees and the Dodgers and the Red Sox. The Dodgers particularly. I mean, I don't think they will sign him, but
Right.
But they're so good at developing players and trading and getting talent from everywhere that if they signed a guy to a deal and he turns into a giant bust, they'll just develop their own Aaron Judge and be fine with it. But yeah, I cannot picture him playing anywhere outside of New York.
Yeah.
I can't. It just feels like one of those situations where his agent or whatever they'll ultimately give Yankees the right of first refusal, right? So he'll get a big deal from somebody else, and the Yankees will be able to top it. And if you're in New York, you can't let him go, right? I mean,
no, their offense other than him is not that great. Like, I feel like they can't afford to lose him, honestly.
Yeah, I agree.
They could bet against themselves, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
So, all right.
Yeah, Erie just had a big strikeout. That's what happened.
They got one.
Yeah, it's top of the
Wolf.
Yeah, is the Wolf? Yeah. So it's Erie 6, Richmond, and going into the top of the 9th right now. So we will keep you updated. I might step away for a moment to collect some audio. So my inside number this week is 99 and 8. Because yesterday, Chris and I spent a lot of time trying to find this one out. But so Kerry Carpenter hit his 6th home run on exactly his 100th plate appearance, which is the most. It's the second most, and that would be, is that right? The second most? Yeah, second fastest
Yeah, I think it was a tough one to figure out. So I think the second fastest to 6 home runs. Does that sound right?
Yeah.
And at least this millennium, if you will. Robert Fick did it a little bit quicker through 2 seasons in terms of plate appearances. I think that was it. But
yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
But the one that we're talking about was Matt Joyce, right?
Yeah, Matt Joyce hit 8 home runs in 99 plate appearances, but in 30 games. But Kerry has 6 in 28 games and 100 plate appearances. Again, that sounds like a trivial thing but he has just as many home runs as Spencer Torkelson does. And Chris figured out the math. On his pace, you would have hit, on his current pace right now, he hit 30 home runs in the major leagues. He has 36 for the year, which is, I mean, again, combining levels, which I'm not going to even try to attempt to research that. And I think I've my brain this week, the amount of research I've done for Woodward and in general, I think my brain's fried. That being said, though, it is still impressive for a left-handed bat, and I think he makes his way into the conversation next year for outfield consideration. Again, the reason why I've been so impressed with Kerry Carpenter is teams keep throwing fastballs. Okay, he's going to nail them. So, I mean, in terms of the question becomes, well, how's he done against off-speed pitches? And so one of the things I was looking up, because that's a good indication, and then there's bat pip and, luck and all that stuff. So in terms of how he has done with that, and that's a big role into max exit velocity. I mean, exit velocity is 87.3. It's, 30% K rate, all that. But in terms of breaking balls, he is hitting 179 against them. And he has a 39% whiff rate on him. That's that gives you pause for concern, but fastballs he has no problem with. All his home runs have been off fastballs.
Yeah.
So again, if you can make the adjustment to breaking balls and off-speed stuff, off-speed stuff, he's got a triple on batting 222, but you would like to see it a little better. So.
Yeah, that's I compared him to Brendan Bosch when he was coming up because that was basically Bosch murdered a fastball, and then once they decided that they could throw him sliders low and inside every time and he'd swing, that was it for him. So Carpenter might be able to survive if he doesn't swing at those as much. His low average is on breaking balls. They were probably breaking balls in the zone for the most part. So if you can lay off the breaking balls outside of the zone, memo Javi Baez, then maybe he's got a chance. We'll see. It's impressive to hit 6 home runs, like you said. That's his torque, and certainly not coming with the amount of fanfare that Torque did. So, yeah, sometimes it's nice to just ignore the fanfare, as it were, and let the results speak for themselves.
Definitely. And again, there's not much to highlight when it comes to power numbers this year. The Tigers are going to have one of their worst offensive seasons in team history, but it is worth mentioning Kerry Carpenter. So we're not always negative, folks. All right. So now it's time for the good, the bad, and the ugly. Or the good, the bad, the funky, whatever. The last one's up to your interpretation.
Okay.
So we did get, I think we did get a request in for the good from, actually, you know what we did? We did get an inside number. I forgot this one. That was from Steve Cook. And he said that his number is 1. That is the Miggy's home run total for each month outside of May. He had 3 that month and also 4 doubles. So the 81 games outside of May, he had 1 home run and 6 doubles. And he doesn't see how he could be on the roster. Well, he's a Hall of Famer, so maybe that's why. I don't know. But anyway, I forgot to mention it in there. So thank you, Steve, for that. All right. Uper, what is your good and bad, the ugly?
All right. The good came up with Quincy Newport, who just hit the big home run tonight. Kind of pimped it around the bases a little bit by doing a full-out sprint. Evidently, Bowie was a little pissed at him for last week for going a little slow, so he rectified that and got the average up. Fun to watch. It's interesting. I liked that signing. Just an under-the-radar guy from the independent league, big dude with some power. Who knows what you run into? And certainly this year, they've caught minor league lightning in a bottle. He's hit a bunch of home runs. He's been a contributor. There's no reason why they can't stick him in AAA next year and see what happens. Will he ever spend a day in the major leagues? I don't know. Josh Lester did, so why couldn't he? So it could happen, but it's been fun to watch. And it was the kind of signing I wish Al Avila had overseen more of, but at least he got that one. My bad.
You mind if I interject real quick? I had promised that I was going to explain more of the story behind what was going on there tonight. So, and you said, that they thought that he was taking his time. So last Thursday, Naporti hit a home run against Richmond. This is one of the situations where Erie was in Richmond last week and then had to go back this week to play the playoffs against them. So last week he hit a home run, and he's been dealing with a foot injury, with some lower body injury. So, and he's not a fast runner in the first place, right? So he took his time getting around the bases. I don't know if he was having fun with it then or whatever, but
or he had an ankle. Remember, he's been playing on a bad ankle too.
Yeah, he's got some issues, so he's not. But apparently Richmond did not take time to do that. And in his second at bat the next day, he was hit with 2 outs in the 4th inning, hit with the first pitch of that at bat. And so Erie felt like that was on purpose. And then in the following inning, when Ty Madden took the mound again, I don't know if it was Richmond's head coach, but whoever's coaching third base started jawing at the Erie dugout, and then the pitch is cleared. No throwing punches or pushing or anything like that, but there was a lot of yelling, and it was all stemming from they thought that Naporti was showing him up, and Erie thought that they hit him on purpose. So you come back around today, and it's very much as I said to Steve Cook, I said it's kind of a Carlos Guillen, Maglio Ordonez, Jared Weaver situation where Naporti hits the home run and says, you want to. So he really pumped it. He stood there for a good 5-6 seconds and then sprinted around the bases. It's kind of like thumbing his nose at them, like, yeah. Here, I'll run real fast this time. And then, as he's going into the dugout, the whole crowd is booing, and he puts his hand up to his ear. Like Raj and I both called him a wrestling heel. And then Raj did a great photo of him next to Hulk Hogan doing the same thing. So, yeah, that's the backstory there. It's just kind of, classic baseball tomfoolery. But just wanted to give everybody the details there. So, sorry.
Always good stuff. Always good stuff. Yeah, I always like the fact that, I've said it before, in the minor leagues, these are guys thrown together basically for one summer, and how they can come together and they play together as a team. And these kind of games mean something to them, and stuff like this is part of that. My bad. And it might not be bad. We don't know. But one thing that happened this year was our friend Alex Avila ended up in the broadcast booth periodically. And I thought he was really good. So you wonder now with what's happened, his time in Detroit was very good. Would he be willing to work for Detroit at some point in a booth? Or the fact that they usher out his dad, does that kind of cut off all communication there? Which would be too bad, because, again, I really liked Alex. I thought he was pretty insightful, pretty smooth delivery. I would love to listen to him on a nightly basis. That'd be no problem. So I just wonder, though, if the developments of this past couple of weeks has turned that off. So we'll see as time goes down the road. My ugly, just wanted to check in on where the Tigers stand with the draft next year and the lottery. Right now, they stand with the 4th worst record, which is backed up by the 4th worst run differential. So a nice matching pair there. So they're at a 383 winning clip. They're trailing only the A's, the Pirates, and the Nationals. Depending what they do, they could slip up into 3rd place. It wouldn't take too much to get there. But there's been people doing some simulations of the lottery, and I have no confidence they're going to stay in the top 3 or top 4. I'll tell you that. It just it's all over the map. So they could easily fall down to 7 or 8, and that would be kind of a bummer. But
this is funny. I was actually doing this last night, and I was going to put together a spreadsheet. I was going to do 100 simulations on Tankathon and like see where they rank, because technically you can drop 6 spots technically.
Yes.
In this lottery. Now I did it like 30 times last night, and they went down to 9th. Was the lowest they got.
Dude, I hate lotteries. Why is there a lottery?
But for the most part, they still have a great shot at being in the top. They get in the top pick, in the top 3. It's probably going to be somewhere between 3 and 6.
Yep.
But so that could be a giant bummer. But it could work out well for them. So we'll wait and see.
And my name, I'm going to plant the flag right now, and it's going to change about 6 times over the next year. But I really like everything I read and see about Max Clark. prep outfielder out of Indiana. Boy, that kid could be a stud. I don't know. I mean, obviously, there's probably other kids who could be the same way, but he really looks like something big. And I think you're going to have to be in the top 2 or 3 to get him. So we'll just see how that all shakes out over time.
Okay. I got a good, I feel like. This one, I don't know. I put some time into this one. So my good is the Cleveland Guardians. So like for the last 8 October, the Tigers have not been in the playoffs. So you kind of find a team to root for, as a Tigers fan. And I think I found my team in the Guardians. They're the team I'm going to be rooting for this October because they really remind me of a team like the 2019 Washington Nationals, a team that really, wasn't looked at to do much come October. And I think the Guardians are looked at in the same way. But I was just looking at some numbers right now. The Guardians have actually struck out the least amount via any team in the MLB right now. Wow. They don't strike out. Their defense is fantastic, especially up the middle. Miles Straw and Stephen Kwan in the outfield cover a lot of ground. Actually, something I read today was Stephen Kwan is actually a 5-WAR player, one of the most underrated players in all of baseball. I just think their mix of pitching, defense. I know they don't hit a lot of home runs. They're second to last in home runs, but everything else I feel like checks the box for them. And yeah, I mean, it's going good for them right now. I mean, they just beat the White Sox twice, and they now have a 6-game lead in the AL Central. My bad is going to be the Tampa Bay Rays and their offense. Their offense is not very good. There's no really other way to put it. They're 25th in baseball in home runs. That's the 6th worst. They're 23rd in OPS. They only have one player with an OPS over 800 in Yandy Diaz. And, unless, Randy Rosarina just becomes a god in October again, I don't really see how they're going to be, producing runs when it matters most. And then for my ugly, it's just the White Sox and just their little series against the Guardians, losing in extra innings. Only 3 games over 500 now. They're 6 games out of first. It's going to take a lot for them to turn this around. And at this point, I don't see it happening. They've drawn the second least walks in all of baseball. They're 21st in home runs. And for the talent that they have offensively, that's unexcusable. So I think the White Sox, they're not making the postseason, and that's pretty ugly to me. So yeah, that's what I got.
Yeah, I think it's uglier that they probably won't make any changes to they might get rid of La Russa, but the front office is going to stay the same. What's interesting is our friend of the podcast, David Lorla, did a nice interview with AJ Hinch for Fangraphs.
Yep.
And there's some good stuff in there, but Hinch actually name drops. He was talking about the team that he would like, and he said the Guardians. Like if I had a team like the Guardians, we'd be running a lot more, and we'd be doing,
like they check all the boxes, and they were a team. They got like bashed so hard this offseason because they didn't do anything, and everyone was like saying, sell the team. But like everyone is eating their words. The Guardians have. I don't know. I think they're a fun team to root for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So here we are.
Let's tune in for the final pitch here.
Sounds good to me.
Set by White. The pitch.
Oh,
swing. Goes down the first.
You got him.
They got him.
The Erie SeaWolves are going to the Eastern League.
Go ahead, Chris. You go ahead.
No, yeah, the SeaWolves are going to the Eastern League Championship. They're this is outstanding. It's their first trip to the playoffs in 2013. They've never won a playoff series, I think, in franchise history.
This is the first time in franchise history.
Oh, that's awesome.
I think that we will be there on Sunday.
We will be there on Sunday. I'm not sick. I am not going to miss. I like the dance. All that crazy dancing. All right. I'm going to post this real quick. Gentlemen, you guys keep going.
All right. I'll do my good, bad, and ugly.
Yeah, go ahead.
So that's fun. The good, Erie SeaWolves. But my actual good was Willie Adames, who that's a name that Tigers fans probably don't,
Yeah, that's not so good.
The Brewers have kind of fallen apart over the last month or so, but it's certainly not Willie Adames' fault. His 1.9 F/WAR over the last 30 days is the third best in baseball, behind only Judge and Bo Bichette, who was my good last week. He's hitting 319, 389, 611 with 7 home runs and 12 doubles, while continuing to play plus defense at shortstop. He's easily having the best year of his career, and it's kind of quiet. Like I hadn't paid much of attention. And I look up and like, oh my God, he's in a 5-WAR year, and he's hitting 244. He's got 31 home runs with average walk rate and that plus defense, and yeah, so I think he just turned 27. So somebody over at Fangraphs wrote an article like, is he going to get $150 million? Is he a candidate for an extension? And I would say probably. So yeah, I mean that's good for him. I mean, and it's in one of those cases where like everybody says, hey, the Rays can do no wrong. Well, they traded him away. Now they got some decent pitching out of it, but yeah, they weren't able to fix him, and then whatever happened in Milwaukee is kind of turned it around for him. So that's cool to see.
He couldn't see, right, in Tampa?
Yeah, and that was the story there, that he couldn't see in the lights there. So maybe fix your lights. Like our buddies at West Michigan are changing all their lights.
Is he a free agent after this year or next?
No, he's got 2 more years.
2 more. Oh,
yeah. So I think let me just double check on that. But yeah, it's kind of weird now. We're like, for so long the Tigers were like, hey, let's get a shortstop, and then they got Javi Baez, and so. We'll see what happens if he sticks at shortstop. But yeah, I'm trying to update this. But so my bad is Riley Green's defense in center field.
Okay.
Now people are getting like, what? And
this will be good.
Honestly, he's overall he's a good defender in center field. He's not bad by any means. Although I'm putting it bad here. He's 2 outs of average to StatCast, 1 defensive run save. He's an above average. Well, those metrics, center fielder, but he's actually the worst outfielder in baseball when it comes to making plays in front of him. He's -4 outs above average there. And I think part of that is Comerica. It's a very big outfield, so you're playing farther back just to start. He actually has the farthest from home plate starting position of any outfielder in baseball. It's 328 feet, 7 feet behind average. Not a huge difference, but you've got to account for things hit behind you, so you've got to start a little farther back. And then it just comes down to him not being very fast for a center fielder. He's got terrific instincts. We've seen him. He makes spectacular plays to his either side, but his spread speed is 23rd out of 27 center fielders this year. And yeah, I mean he's gonna. At the least, it's just something for him to work on. And I wouldn't count that kid out at all. I mean, we talked to him years ago. He said he wanted to stay in center field. He said he'd rather stay in center field and hit 20 bombs than move to a corner and hit 30 bombs. And that's awesome. But, at some point.
Yeah, I don't know about that.
Well, for him, I mean, you want to see, and like I said, I wouldn't put it back past him to address this in the offseason and get better at balls in. But I think ideally, in a perfect world, you get someone with his caliber of defense playing center field who's also, 2 steps faster.
yes.
And Riley Green to a corner, you let him bash the ball, and you let him contend for Gold Gloves in a corner outfield spot, because he's still going to have the instincts. He's still going to have the similar range. He just won't have to cover as much ground. So that's my bad. And, I always like to do my bad is something that can get better, and I think it probably will get better. But, would I be upset if Parker Meadows is playing center field next year? No. His instincts aren't as good as Riley Green, but I would bet that he's close to 30 feet per second in terms of sprint speed instead of 27.5 like Riley Green.
It is amazing to watch Green as much as we have this year, and I've had that in my mind. You've just touched on it. He's batting first and playing center, and really, in my mind, you'd rather see him eventually batting third and playing right field. So we'll just have to see what time does and who they acquire, and if they find a truly hitter.
Yeah, and that was another thing that Hinch mentioned in that podcast with David Laurila, was he said, I just want to get Riley Green as many at bats as possible, which is, I think, the right decision this year. It's a lost year. Yep. Get him as many at bats as possible against big league pitching, and give him as much time in center field as you want. I don't think he's a center fielder for a championship caliber team, but the good news is the Tigers are only about 55 wins away from that level of team. So. And my ugly is Mike Clevenger, and I don't mean his face, although I don't mean his face. He's not a handsome man. But what I'm talking about here is over the last month, he's been one of the worst starters in baseball. It's a 5.7 ERA over his last 6 starts, covering 30 innings. And over the season, he's been decent. It's a 4.23 ERA over 104 innings. Like, you take that. But his strikeout rate is a career low. His home run rate is a career high. His FIP is 4.97, which is not good. It's like the 7th worst pitchers with 100+ innings. And he is a free agent after this year.
Oh.
And remember, this is a dude who put up back-to-back 4-win seasons back in 2018 and 2019 for Cleveland. But it's been kind of all downhill since then. He had the COVID season. They broke protocol and putting Terry Francona at risk, and that led to him getting traded in part, I think, to San Diego. And then he got hurt, so San Diego signed him to a 2-year deal for basically $5.5 million a year. And he just has been kind of average this year. So I think he's going to be a free agent. Maybe a team out there will take a chance on him, but a couple of years ago, he might have gotten 15-20 million on the open market, and I think he's going to be lucky to get what he was making this year. So that's what's ugly there. And he's going to be 30.
Yeah. And they gave up Josh Naylor for him too.
Yeah, and so it didn't work out. Don't trade with Cleveland. Don't trade with Tampa.
Yeah.
Remember, they can't believe they gave up Corey Kluber for Emmanuel Class A. What a bum.
Oh, dude, they gave up Quantrill too. Quantrill, the starting pitcher. Oh, that's bad. That's pretty bad.
So that's my ugly. And I think Raj is still grabbing that the video there for Erie. He's trying to. We're trying to get the audio of Greg Gagne. Because the MLB TV only does the home feed, and we'd like to get the reaction from Erie's team, which is this is a long time coming for Erie and for Greg. He hasn't had any playoff games in all his time there. I don't think
that's great.
So,
yeah, well, we got some questions on Twitter if you guys want to get into those.
Yeah, absolutely.
One I see right now is from, I don't know how to pronounce his name, but it was, do you think Scott Harris gets rid of all the Alavila guys in free agency? That one caught my eye a little bit.
Yeah, that's from Epic D3C.
Yeah. What do you guys think?
Well,
well, what would you consider?
My suspicion is they're going to find a way to keep Sam Menzin around, only because he seemed like he worked well with Hinch. And again, it's always easier to do nothing than it is to do something. He's there. I think that if I were someone like obviously David Chad, Place, those kind of guys, I think anybody on that scouting side is probably gone. And that's where Harris is likely to start really building his components of people.
Yeah, I was thinking of it from a player aspect. Like I was thinking like Javi Baez and Eduardo Rodriguez, I would say are Alavila guys. So I don't see them getting moved anytime soon, but Chris, I'd like to hear your thoughts too.
And that's interesting. I didn't think about it as a player. Yeah, I mean, I think we're going to see a ton of player movement. Again, I don't know if you can trade Javi Baez. He might be able to trade Eduardo Rodriguez. I don't think you'd get the value that you want for either of those guys, though. But
no.
Yeah, I mean, I echoed what you've said. I think the old guard in terms of the scouting and the scouting department for the most part is probably on the way out. David Chad, Dan Lunetta, Scott Place, Tom Moore, the international director. I think there's a good chance that some of the newer guys like Sartori and Menzin and Garco and Ribas, I think that, we've talked about it before, that this has been one of the better years for development from the Tigers farm in a long time. So I would like to see them keep those guys there. And I think we mentioned it a couple times, but the Tigers do have some decent scouts. And there's one scout in particular that we've talked about named Joey Lothrop. That he's out in the Four Corners for the Tigers. And he's the one who signed Wilmer Flores, signed Bo Brisky. There's a kid from the JUCO this year that they signed. And then we were just discussing today, the Tigers randomly got, and we missed it a couple weeks ago. They signed an 18-year-old high school kid out of Colorado as an undrafted free agent. He's 6'8" and throws he touches the low 90s. And Perfect Game had him as like a top 500 overall high school player in the country. So I have to assume that's him again. So I don't know. I just like that dude. Seems like he's doing earning a paycheck. So if you can keep him, I would appreciate that. But other than that, yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of changes in the scouting side of the Tigers, and certainly a lot of player movement. I think a lot of guys run the 40-man right now. We may see 40% of the 40-man change by the beginning of next year.
Yeah, that's probably very possible, no question. But it's going to be interesting who those players are going to be. It's really going to be fascinating.
I don't know. Two that I thought of was Scope and Candelario. Those two came to mind.
Now, before Harris was hired, my take that I was quietly keeping myself to write something later was that I think Candelario was going to return. That was just kind of my hunch. I still think that, even after Harris. I think that even while we may see a lot of change, and we should see a lot of change, at some point they got to put a major league product on the field. He's only a year removed from a fairly good season, leading the league in doubles, and was pretty productive. Do they really think that now that he's had a down year that it's over for him? At his age, I have a suspicion, and he won't be that expensive, that he's back. But, we're just going to have to see what Harris, how much he swings that cleaver. So we'll see.
And one thing that we touched on a little bit, that what San Francisco kind of specialized in as soon as Harris got there and under 82 was that they seemed to find a lot of these guys in their late 20s and early 30s and put them in positions to succeed. And Candelario would fit in that role there. And I think part of that, like I said, Zaidi comes from the A's. The A's were always really good at platooning guys. And I think the Giants did a great job with that too. You got like Darren Ruff. And it's kind of interesting. I was looking at the Tigers and thinking, okay, so we're looking at an outfield next year that could possibly Riley Green, Akil Baddoo, Terry Carpenter, Austin Meadows. All four of those dudes are left-handed hitters. Now, Green isn't terrible against lefties, and Meadows is, he's had some issues. So it wouldn't shock me if we see some kind of random, like even a Dane Myers, who is a minor leaguer who's 26, I think, maybe 27. But he's got an OPS against lefties this year of close to 1,300 in Double-A. So it's just situations like that where, teams always want a guy who could play every day, and they want these guys who are complete players. But if you want to win, and I think Scott Harris wants to win immediately, like not necessarily win a title next year, but I think he wants to establish a winning team. Sometimes you can create an average player by combining two below average players, and I think we may see more of that. And so, I think there's be a lot of movement in that regard.
Parker Meadows, he's a lefty too. So
so a lot of lefties out of nowhere. It seemed like the Tigers never had any lefties, and suddenly their entire outfield.
That's true. But there was like all righties at once upon a time.
I saw some rando tweet. I don't know who the guy was. He might have 4 followers. Okay. But the message was he was worried that Harris was going to have a bunch of platoons and be unwatchable like the Giants. And I'm thinking, well, the Giants win. I like winning. Winning is fun.
Winning is very fun.
I'm pro win. So if they have 4 platoons next year and they're winning, I'm in.
That's what Sparky Anderson did in the 80s, and no one batted an eye then. He platooned Tommy Brookins with a bunch of other people. Get out of here, that nonsense. I don't like that.
I've never heard of someone saying platoons are
punchable, man.
Not to watch. Yeah.
Sorry, Chris. I didn't.
Go ahead, Raj. Well, we started doing questions, but if you want to do your good, bad, and ugly, Raj, we're here.
Yeah, let's keep it going, guys. The good and bad, the ugly for me is this. Look, the good, Erie won. The bad, I got sick this week. The ugly, let's see. You know what the ugly was? Nothing, because Erie won. There you go. No, actually, I have an ugly. I reserved the hotel Tuesday to go, but then the Scott Harris press conference came back, and Motel 6 still charged me, even though I canceled and said, look, I potentially might have something. I might, because at the time I thought, because based off what Sarah was going on with Sarah, my wife, I thought something could be COVID related, and I canceled, and they still charged me. And like, we'll see what we can do. And they still haven't, still yet to get a refund. So
I'm announcing an official Woodward Tigers podcast boycott of Motel 6.
Well, if they're going to be sponsored, the Motel 6 is the finest. That actually, the one in Erie, I'm not going to lie, that is a very fine establishment.
Yeah,
that is
nice.
they're everybody worked there is like world class, and I really liked it there, comparatively speaking to
the crime scene we stayed at.
Yeah, the crime scene at Super 8. It was a Forensic Files, Erie, Pennsylvania. There. So, anyways, we're not going to disperse that anymore. But continue on with the questions, gentlemen.
So yeah, I don't know, John. You want to keep reading them, or?
Well, yeah, I had another one that was similar from Deadly Ninja Bees. He said, "Who survives the purge? Where does Gregory Soto fit in? He's not exactly a strike thrower."
I think Lynn Henning. There's our Lynn Henning mention. We got to get a Lynn Henning mention every podcast. It seems like.
Oh yeah.
He said Soto's time is waning now with the Harris hire. I don't know about that. The guy's still a pretty effective reliever. They don't grow on trees. I think there's enough there to work with for Chris Fetter to see if they can get him to the point where he's throwing the strikes we'd all like him to throw. But he still gets the job done the vast majority of the time. And he's got talent. And I don't think you toss away talent just because he might be an outlier on the strike throwing percentage you like. So I'm someone who thinks unless a nice trade value is out there, that Soto is back.
Yeah, just as a lefty specialist. I mean, I could see him in that role next year.
Guys, can we just say one thing? Look, I give everybody who's listening at home enough advance notice, but I'm going to just play this. Wrong! Henning was wrong about a lot of these things. Take it as you will. He also did get the player development list, and all he has to do is give somebody a call and gets what he wants. But that's cool. I'm not trying to be. Do I sound bitter? Yes, I do, because of all the stuff we do on the back end. But it's okay. I'm not 30, 40 plus years in the business of veteran. So that being said,
okay. It's funny. I think this dominating the strike zone thing, it has a chance to be like a career-long double-edged sword for Scott Harris. I think anytime they have a player like Javi Baez or Gregory Soto who isn't, walking at a 15% rate or striking out everybody, people are like, "Oh, I thought you want to dominate the strike zone." But you could also couch that by saying like, yeah, when he's in the strike zone, he dominates. When Javi Baez swings at strikes, he dominates. You could say it either way, any way you want. Now, our buddy Brandon Day from Bless You Boys likes to compare Gregory Soto to Camilo Doval, who is a very similar pitcher. He's right-handed, but he was the Giants closer, and similar stuff and almost identical walk issues throughout the minors. Doval was like 5.3 walks per 9 in the minors, and it's dropped down to 3.6 in the majors. And Soto was, I think, 5.6 in the minors, and or 5.3, and it's like 5.2 in the majors. So they're pretty similar. So I would not. I think Scott Harris is smart enough to know, like, this guy is a lefty who throws triple digits. There's something here. Let's see if we can fix it before he moves it. And if he does trade him, I think we'll be like, all right, he thinks he can't fix it. But, you don't just give a guy away like that without trying to fix him first. And I think that's similar with Candelario is up until this year, Candelario was one of the few guys who walked. He led the league in doubles last year, and he just kind of evaporated this year. So I think you got to look at him and try to figure out what went wrong and see if you could fix it first.
Yeah.
So,
Well, what about Scope? Because Scope was great last year too. So
I could see them parting ways with Scope as much as he seems like a good dude and a good team player, and he was a great defender this year. But he is somebody who you would never describe as dominating the strike zone in any way, really. I mean, he swings at everything. And this year the power went away, and if that's, I don't know, it's tough.
Yeah. But as far as and that's the thing that I really crack up about Candelario is that people forget. People were just. I mean, look, Candelario's had a bad year, but the last 2 years, offensively speaking, he was been one of those Tigers' consistent bats.
Probably the most.
Yeah, Detroit baseball though. I'm on Team Cody here with this because. It's frustrating when you go down there every single day, or you go to Erie, and somebody just has to give you a call when we literally do this out of our damn dime, for Christ's sake. And I'm just gonna say that I'm a little frustrated with. Hey, I'm raising my hand at the press conference. I'm gonna ask a question. Nope. Okay, that's fine. That's fine. You know what? Look. Bottom line is this. I'm just going to say this, and I'm just going to get it out there. I want to be the best us as a collective, the best source for Tigers coverage. That's all I can do. Just got to outwork everybody else. That's fine. That's
bring
fine.
Bring an auctioneer paddle next time.
Hey guys, hey, look right here. I had a good question too. I'm not gonna. It's not a way. I'm not embarrassing. It's whatever.
And then the next morning, we see Scott Harris outside of Woodward Sports.
Oh yeah, you didn't? Did you tell that story on the pod?
I didn't. No, I went in there on yesterday morning, Wednesday, and the coffee shop right next to I didn't realize it was part of like the whole complex. Scott Harris is right there having coffee with his family, and maybe some Tigers people. I didn't really recognize him, but I recognized Scott Harris. I'm like, hey, that's fun. I'm not going to bother him while he's with his family. But
yeah, the bottom line is this. It's a little frustrating, and what Detroit baseball said is absolutely correct. It makes the job 10 times harder. So, which is why if you go on our Discord, I put out the player development lists that are behind a paywall on Detroit News. Why? Because I'm the Robin Hood, maybe. I don't know. No, I'm not.
Well,
look,
technically
that's information
what we do with our videos.
Pardon me?
That's basically what we do with our videos, right? We're just taking the videos and distilling them and putting them out for free. At some point, they're going to come.
Maybe we're the ones doing something wrong. We're not getting paid enough or not being paid. That's fine. Well, not really, but at the same time, look, our passion is baseball. We love baseball, love talking baseball. And if it's news, which it is, we'll provide it. That's as simple as that. That's what we're trying to do. We're providing news. We're providing a service for everybody that appreciates it. So everybody out there appreciates it. Thank you. I just need to vent a little bit because it's just one of those weeks. I'm just like, all right, cool. I can't even get I've asked a couple times to get people on the podcast. Silence. It's not amateur out here, folks. You might think that, but I'm looking you right straight in the eye. It's not. All right, enough. Sorry, I had to go on my soapbox there.
All right, Chris, I had another question for you, specifically for you. It's from Steve Cook. He said, has Chris come around to Flores and Olsen being starting pitchers in the bigs?
That's a yes and no answer there for that. I think Flores can be a starter in the big leagues now. I still think he needs to develop another pitch because right now it's fastball, slider, or curveball basically, and both the breaking balls are good. In the fastball, he can get swings and misses in the zone, which is always huge. But I would like for him to develop something, a changeup. I know that he's working on a changeup. He doesn't feel comfortable throwing it for strikes yet. But yeah, he's thrown enough strikes this year, and he's worked enough innings this year where I'm no longer concerned about him being able to do that in the big leagues. I don't know how successful he'll be, like I said, without developing that extra pitch. But yeah, he's good, and I wouldn't be shocked to see him start a few games next year.
Yeah,
I'm still in the reliever bucket.
Yes,
with
yes.
Olsen.
Me too. I've always thought that way about him.
And again, it's for me. It's a couple things. Olsen's delivery, he's cleaned it up, but it's still. I don't think it's ever going to allow him to have average big league command, and particularly with his fastball. And his fastball just doesn't have the characteristics that Flores's does. His fastball is more like Ty Madden's and like Jackson Jobe's a little bit, where if they leave it in a bad spot, it gets hit for home runs. It goes over the fence. And so he has to be more perfect with that, and he just hasn't been for most of the year. He's been good enough at times, but even again, going back to that AJ Hinch podcast, he mentioned Olsen, he mentioned Jobe, and he mentioned Madden. He said, yeah, we've cleaned up Jobe's delivery, we've cleaned up Madden's delivery, and we've changed Olsen's pitch usage, which I think is in large part because his fastballs were getting blasted. And he's got a slider that will flash plus at times, and his curveball it's a decent fourth pitch. And I think his changeup is consistently a plus pitch. It just kind of reminds me of Alex Lang a little bit, where he's a guy I think that could be potentially pretty dominant out of the bullpen if he's throwing 70% off-speed breaking ball, and the fastball becomes his changeup, if you will. But that's just how I feel about those two guys.
Do you think that Olsen comes back next spring as a starter again, though?
I think he'll be starting in Toledo next year. And I wouldn't be shocked at all if they give him a few starts in the big leagues too. I don't picture it working out terribly well for him. That's all. But get him better and see what happens.
Yeah, is he the future closer? I mean, could you see that as a role for him?
It's possible. I wouldn't put it past he's not a terribly big physical guy. I don't know if that matters for a closer or for a starter for that matter. But we've seen him top out at like 96, and that's plenty good enough for a closer with a fastball. But it's tough to be a closer if your fastball isn't missing bats consistently, and I don't necessarily see that with him. Maybe if he does gain a couple ticks of velocity, in 1 inning bursts, but yeah, I mean, he strikes me more as kind of a 7th, 8th inning reliever, which is still valuable. It's a great return for Daniel Norris.
Oh yeah, for sure.
It's just so interesting now. It depends so much for them is going to depend on, how we continue to define starters. I mean, if it's simply get through a lineup twice and you're done, then that obviously raises Olson's chance.
Well, yeah,
so
yeah,
he doesn't have to go too deep.
Yeah, but didn't Scott Harris find guys like Alex Cobb and Alex Wood, like in San Francisco, just guys on 1 or 2 year contracts? I can see that as a potential solution for next year's rotation.
Yeah. Rod, you were going to say something?
Forget it. Let's move on.
Yeah, I think it's who knows. It's possible. He broke Erie's strikeout record this year, so there's a lot to like about results. I just the big leagues is the big leagues. It's not Double A. It's hard. Matt Manning was the pitcher of the year in Double A a couple years ago, and just now sort of figuring things out at the big league level. Mm-hmm. So, and then I saw that Steve actually added a couple more questions there. He said, and somebody else in the chat asked this. He said, with Carpenter continuing to hit for power, how much will this bleed into the Miguel Cabrera decision? He hasn't slugged over 325 in a month since June. If he came back, he has to make a 50-60 game role, and you can't bat him cleanup anymore. I think with Scott Harris, you've got a chance for kind of a clean break with Miguel Cabrera there. I don't know what kind of, if he's going to get a mandate from Chris Ilitch and says, no, we need to keep him around just because. But it wouldn't shock me if he sits down with Cabrera and they work out something where he's not. Either he kind of goes on a retirement tour and plays once a week next year, or he leaves this year. But I think at this point it's getting kind of late for them to announce that. Yeah. It would be kind of, I don't know, that would, I think, rub a lot of people the wrong way if they go, yep, he's done next year. So I don't know. What do you think, Raj?
I'm sorry. You guys go ahead. You guys, you're fine.
Oh, I was asking about, if they, do you think Harris is going to keep Cabrera?
I really don't. To me, I don't have I think there's a lot of preconceived notions that are going on right now about the roster, and I'm just going to wait and see because Cabrera is a veteran. They have the respect. If they could find a team that will offload him, great. But if not, I know that he is an issue. Everybody is so worried about his power and everything, but let the guy play out his damn last year and leave him the hell alone. That's my take on it. There you go.
Can he get healthy over the offseason so that he can come back next year? And can he poke singles and hit 300 for 2 months again? And, be a semi-contributor? And then, as he always does, the knee is going to start to give way as the year goes on. And he probably rides it out on the disabled, the injured list. And I just have a feeling that's the way it's going to go. That he's going to have a little part-time job, and we'll have a few little stretches of singles hitting excellence, and then hopefully it's a clean break in 24 and they move on.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about earlier. I can see Cabrera being kind of the regular DH against lefties, right?
Yeah,
I think, that would fit. And Gary Carpenter could be, Gary Carpenter wants to play in the field, but there may be a few situations where he is one of the 3 best defensive outfielders. So if he wants to stay in the lineup, he may have to be kind of the regular DH. But yeah, if you have a platoon of Kerry Carpenter and Miguel Cabrera, you might get decent production on the DH next year. So I could see that happening.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And Steve threw in one last question. He said, why is Danny Soretti the greatest 6th-round pick of all time? Laugh out loud. Seriously, when is he going to go into a fund? Does he make our top 10 in 23?
Ooh, that last one sounds a little aggressive.
Let's pump the brakes, folks. I like Danny Soretti. He's doing a good job. Pump the brakes.
This is Brian Moeller erasure. Brian Moeller's the greatest 6th-round pick in Tigers history. I don't know. Yeah, Raj and I have talked about this several times just privately because we've been watching it. And the most striking thing about Danny Serretti so far is that he doesn't seem at all bothered by the leap to Double-A in competition. He's controlling the strike zone still. He's not hitting the ball terribly hard. His 3-run homer the other night, notwithstanding, which was huge. He's just kind of poking the ball to the opposite field, getting hits here and there. And we thought he's a little bit reminiscent of Andre Lipsius, where it's not physically impressive. He looks kind of funky in the box, but he just hits. And he's been mostly steady on defense until I think he had 2 errors today, or at least 1. So, yeah, I'm excited. I think he's definitely worked his way into the top 30. I think, at draft time, I wouldn't have put him in the top 30. He was a 4-year starter at North Carolina. You don't really think a whole lot of him as a 6-round pick. But, yeah, I think he's in the top 30 now. In the top 10, he doesn't have the physical tools. I don't think he'd be a top 10 prospect.
Did we get to Mark's questions, by the way?
I didn't see. No, Mark's ones, I don't think so.
I got the questions. So we'll end with these two. Mark asked a question last week, and we didn't get to it. So that was my apologies, and I want to make sure we answer both his questions. And his question from last week was, hey, Rogelio, Joe Jimenez has pitched 55 innings this year. He's only got 3 home runs while striking out 76, is only walking 13. What role do you see him in for next year? Hopefully gets a few more late inning, high leverage possibilities. I suppose it's also possible the new GM trades in this winter. I believe he's only had 1 year of arbitration remaining. And then the other question he had was, and this was kind of a philosophy, or kind of a more of a bigger picture question, if you will, or a fan question. I think you might, or excuse me, if you were to catch a milestone home run, for example, the Aaron Judge home run, Miggy, Pujols, etc., would you give it back, and what would you ask for? I see a lot of people tweeting out wanting monetary reward, but I always thought a few signatures, team sign, batting gloves, and sign ball would be sufficient. Thank you, Mark, for the questions. As far as Jimenez goes, I think Jimenez is kind of like, to me at least, not talked about enough out of his bullpen this year. He's had some really good numbers. He's recovered very well. And I think give credit to AJ Hinch and the way they've used him in situations and kind of recognizing they put him in a low leverage situation. They built him right back up gradually. And that's, I think they did it correctly, and they built up his confidence. And after that, he was money. And I think that for all the, everybody's talking about Alex Lang and Chafin and all the cast of characters in there, but Jimenez has quietly had a good season. And at least in my opinion, it's not talked about enough. And I think that is something definitely worth highlighting. If they can get some trade value, great. But I think if he has a spot in this role, I think he has a spot in this team next year if the Tigers choose to bring him back. And as far as that, the home run milestone catch or anything like that, I would just want season tickets. I don't think that's, I know you guys are laughing at me about it, but quite frankly, season tickets are monetary value alone, comparatively speaking, to that home run. I'm not asking. At first, I originally thought about asking about for $25,000, but then now then I would look like a dick and then just like say, well, you're like everybody else. And in reality, I would just want season tickets in a nice spot for 2 years and a jersey. That's it. And I don't think that's too much to ask. And if you think I'm an asshole for asking that, well, I don't care. So
for me on Jimenez, relievers are so volatile, and volatile could be Joe's middle name, for that matter, over the length of his career. I don't know if he has a ton of trade value. I'd be inclined to just roll with him again next year, keep him on this track, coach him up to stay where he is, be a 7th, 8th inning guy, kind of maybe assume the innings that Fulmer had if things work out. And that's a hell of a reliever, especially where he was a couple of years ago when you could have swore the clock was ticking on his career. So good for him. But I'd be really surprised if there's a huge trade market out there for him. On terms of if I caught a valuable ball, I'm kind of along the lines with Raj. I mean, I didn't think about season tickets, but now that you mentioned it, yeah, that'd be pretty cool. I think that's fair. I'd want a picture with the player, a signed picture. I think they could post for a picture, no problem. And then, of course, they'd have to come on the podcast for 30 minutes. And not see it. I mean, that's a done deal.
That's good. Yeah, I would want a picture too. But in terms of Jimenez, I think he could, be a potential option for the closer. I don't think he has any trade value just because he doesn't have the track record that teams are going to want. But yeah, I think the role he's currently in right now is great. I mean, his numbers, he's probably the Tigers' best reliever, arguably. So I'd say keep him in that, eighth inning role. And if they don't want to go with Soto next year as the closer, I think Jimenez is one of their better options internally.
Yeah, I mean, go ahead, Chris.
No, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say. I mean, I really, if he's a veteran and he can already do the job, they're gonna need starters next year. So that's all I was gonna say.
Yeah, I mean, Jimenez, he's always been a little bit iffy with men on base for whatever reason. But other than that, he's been outstanding this year. By FWAR, he's a top 20 reliever in baseball.
Wow.
1.4 WAR. He's got a 2.00 FIP. So I would certainly listen. If somebody's looking for a reliever in the offseason, I would listen. It may be one of those situations, though, where you just kind of you hope that he stays good next year. And if you're out of it at the trade deadline, then relievers tend to bring back more value at the deadline than anybody else, or not than anybody else, but more than you would expect. So, yeah, I mean, he's a guy I'd hold on to, I think, unless somebody blows you away with an offer in the offseason. Maybe even he's a guy that you kind of sign to a longer deal, a 2-3 year deal. I mean, he hasn't been good up until this year, for the most part. So that's a little bit scary. But you could structure it in a way that I think wouldn't hurt you too much. And yeah, he could close games if he had to. So that's always good to have an arm like that. Yeah, I mean, for the milestone home run thing, remember a couple years ago that dude caught I think it was an Albert Pujols, was it his 600th home run? I think he caught in Comerica, and he wouldn't give it away. He just didn't give it back. And there was a whole story about it, and it was because his son had died, and he just it was something that was special to him. Which I give that guy a ton of credit, because I feel like the pressure was probably immense for him to give it back. I think if it were Aaron Judge, I'd be like, whatever, I don't care. But if it was a Tigers player, I'd be like, okay, let me sit in on the draft all 3 days. That's what I want. I want to be in the draft room. I'll sign the NDA. I won't talk about it if I do, then whatever. But that's just what that's something that I would love to be a part of, just to witness all the stuff that goes on behind the scenes. They would, of course, never do it, and I'd just have to accept my signed game worn pants or whatever. But that's what I would want.
I'd want a job. Let me work for the Tigers.
Give me a job.
Good luck with that. Anyway,
here's a ball. Give me a job. So.
They'll like, here, you want a job and you don't specify what the job, they're gonna put you in hot dogs.
Yeah, that's what
exactly. The old singing hot dog vendor.
All right, so was that it, gentlemen, on that question?
I believe so.
The only other one I saw was Buddy asked if this was Carpenter's rookie year. He said, I may have already asked this on Green, but forgot the criteria. So yes.
Yeah. Yes.
The criteria for being a rookie in Major League Baseball is if you have more than 130 plate appearances or 45 days on the active roster, you're no longer a rookie. And Carpenter is as Rod mentioned, I think he's 91 at bats, and he's at 43 days on the active roster right now. So in 2 days, he will no longer be a rookie, or this will have been his rookie year. Now, if they send him to AAA today, he could be a rookie again next year. But as we talked about, he's like their best power hitter, so I don't think they're going to do that.
No.
Well, on that note, gentlemen, thanks so much for thank you for everybody participating on the YouTube chat tonight. Thank you for everybody listening to episode 28 of the Woodward Tigers podcast. We'll be back. Actually, we're probably going to be doing a live show Sunday. I got to figure that part out. Either it's going to be jamming down in Erie. They're expected to be sold out, but I think we'll probably do something out there. So, which means we'll actually be hanging on the press box pretty much the whole game. I mean, for once, there will be not seats available. So that will be something I'm looking forward to. We'll get some playoff action, some championship playoff action as Erie advances for the first time in franchise history to the Eastern League Championship. And they'll get the winner of Somerset and New York. Speaking of that, by the way, that right now there were 5-5 in the last time I checked, there was 5-5 in the 10th between Portland and by the way, Portland is the Boston Red Sox affiliate and Somerset is the Yankees affiliate. So
yeah, that's the hated rival.
The hated rival. And Somerset won the series and they won in extra innings 6-5. And so they will be playing Somerset on Sunday. I think, let me see if I got that right. Is that right? Let me see.
Yeah,
is Jason Dominguez on that team?
He is. He got called up recently.
Nice.
Of course he did.
So, but they moved up Anthony Volpe. I don't know. They've got some talent there, but yeah, a lot of their talent got moved this year. So, and as they say, you're not allowed to send guys down from AAA unless there's an injury. So we'll see if there's a rash of fake injuries for Somerset.
Yeah, that is the final. Yeah, that is the final. So that was the. By the way, just want to mention this real quick. Tampa right now has the potential to win their fourth title, fourth Rays affiliate to win a league championship in 2022.
Yeah, the Hot Rods won, right? And
right now the Biscuits are playing against I think it's
Pensacola beat the Biscuits 6-5. So the Biscuits.
Yeah. I have a Biscuits hat too. It's in somewhere back there.
Yeah, I mean, I think that was like designed by the same people who did the lug nuts, right? Like that was right when people started getting wacky with the minor league designs and yeah, I mean that's one of the things we talk about. The Tampa, they set a record last year, I think, for winning percentage across the minor leagues. And you know who had 4 winning minor league teams this year? The Detroit Tigers.
Yeah.
Toledo, Erie, and Lakeland somehow was over 500 despite having a bunch of 18-year-olds. So that was impressive.
Yeah, and we should maybe head out to Toledo Saturday before we head out to Erie because this is the last. I think this is the last homestand for the Mud Hens, and so they are 5.5 back of Nashville. They just had the winning streak snapped, but it was an impressive one, enough to make a win differential of +38. So they've been able to get that going. So
it was a doubleheader today, right? They lost the first game, so that snapped their win streak after 12. But then they won the nightcap, right?
Yep,
so
that's correct.
So they've won 13 out of 14. Home run for Cody Clemens. Good for him.
Yeah, and they will finish the season. Looks like possibly 19 to 20 games of over 500. So it's winning baseball across the board, and it's can't ask for any more, much more than that. So on that note, everybody, we'll see you Sunday in Erie. Chris and I will be out in Erie. Have a good weekend, everybody, and say something profound. I got nothing. All right. Good night, folks.
Good night.
Good night.